Welcome to Cathedral. I'm Father Greg Sack, with special thanks once again to David Jonas and Mark Teresi. I want to thank both of them for providing beautiful music to begin and end the spiritual video. So Mark and David, thank you. Special thanks once again to Lori Doyle, who does a beautiful job in this whole video presentation every week, very dedicated. So Lori, thank you. We are now celebrating this weekend the 29th Sunday in Ordinary Time. It's hard to believe that now October is 2/3 over and the leaves have started changing color. It's getting cooler. We are truly in the midst of fall. Begin this way. There was this elderly guy, mean, crotchety, rough on everybody in a small town. He's riding his donkey into town. He starts complaining about the donkey. Oh, donkey, you're fat, you smell, you're ugly, you're old. The donkey gets so angry, flips him off his back into a ditch and kills him. The guy is now being waked, and the elderly widow has a whole line of people. There's a priest in the distance watching. Every time a man comes up to the grieving widow, she shakes her head no. Every time a woman comes up to the casket, she shakes her head yes. At the end of the wake evening, the priest says, I have to ask you a question. I noticed that every time a man came up, you shook your head no. Every time a woman came up, you shook your head yes. Why? The woman said very simply, every time a man came up, they would ask me, is there anything I can do for you? I'd say, no, thank you. Every time a woman came up, she would ask, can I borrow the donkey? You didn't see the punchline coming, I bet. Oh, that is so funny. Someone once wrote the following. First, I was dying to finish high school and start college. Then I was dying to finish college and start working. And then I was dying to marry and have children. And then I was dying for the children to grow old enough to go to school so I could go back to work. Then I was realizing I was dying to retire. And now I am dying. And suddenly I realize I forgot to live. And suddenly I realize I forgot to live. Andrew Carnegie, one of the richest men in the world had ever known, was once asked, you could have stopped any time, couldn't you? Because you always had much more than you ever needed. Carnegie replied, yes, you're right, but I could not stop. I'd forgotten how to. I could not stop. I forgot how to. Many people have forgotten or are afraid to think, wonder, and live a life for others in service in the name of the Lord. In life, there are two educations, one that teaches us how to make a living, and one that teaches us how to live for others. Society can teach us how to make a living, but today's gospel beautifully reveals life's deepest secret, how to live and what to live for. That's the beauty of this weekend's gospel and readings, this 29th Sunday in Ordinary Time, how to live and what to live for. Jesus says in today's gospel, anyone among you who aspires to greatness must serve the rest. Whoever wants to rank first among you must serve the needs of all. The Son of Man has come not to be served, but rather to serve. The German theologian Karl Rahner once said the following very powerfully. Every age has its own task before God. The task of today's world is to believe. For today is not this or that belief, this or that article of faith, which has called us into doubt, but faith itself, our capacity to believe, our willingness to commit ourselves completely to a single, unambiguous, demanding conviction. That conviction is that in God we live and move and have our being. That summarizes everything. In God we live and move and have our being. Helen Keller was blind and deaf. When somebody once asked her what caused her the greatest suffering, her blindness or her deafness, She replied without hesitation, "My deafness." Are we deaf to living out the gospel challenge more seriously in our own lives? Do we hear and believe only what we want to hear and believe? In the Great Depression of the 1930s, government agents used to travel through Tennessee mountain area, making on-the-spot appraisals of the needs of impoverished farmers. They would give them on-the-spot money to buy food and make necessary repairs. One agent found an elderly woman in a cabin. The cabin had a dirt floor, broken windows, and hardly anything in her little, simple home. He said to her, "If I gave you a government check for $200, how would you use that money?" She thought for a moment and said, "I reckon I would give it to poor people up here in these mountains." That elderly woman had developed the art of focusing on the needs and care for others rather than her own needs and own problems. Keep in mind today's gospel of living for others and serving others in the name of the Lord, while listening again the regrets of a wasted life of living for oneself. I read this earlier. First, I was dying to finish high school and start college. And then I was dying to finish college and start working. And then I was dying to marry and have children. And then I was dying for my children to grow old enough to go to school so I could go back to work. And then I was dying to retire. And now I am dying. And suddenly I realize I forgot to live. Only when we are able to give life away do we find life. That's the secret of life. Only when we are able to give life away do we find life. Remember this thought: I shall pass this world but once. Any good, therefore, that I can do, or any kindness I can show to any human being, let me do it now. Let me not defer or neglect it, for I shall not pass this way again. May God bless all of you. Go Bears, go Birds. Amen.